Have you ever read a book and thought, wow, this is a great book, but why don't I like it? I've had this experience a few weeks back when I read The Sword of Kaigen, so let's talk about it. Hello fellow mushroom people and welcome to today's video. Like I said, I want to talk about The Sword of Kaigen. I have some mixed feelings about that one. I read this book 2 weeks ago for our Dragon's Library book club and we discussed it on stream with some people and everyone was like, yeah, this is a 4.5 star book for me. Oh, well, I read this 5 stars. Oh, this is probably my favorite fantasy book ever. And I was sitting there, it was my turn, I knew I had to say something and I was like, so it's probably a 3-star book for me? Yeah, so that has been 2 weeks ago, I slept on it, I thought about it and I think I want to bump it up to 3.5. So it's not as bad as I initially thought. I had just finished the book on the same day we filmed the stream, or we streamed the discussion, and I was very emotional at that point still. So since then I've thought about it. I think that the book does many things well. I didn't personally enjoy it that much, but let's get into it. So, in case you don't know, The Sword of Kaigen is about a warrior family from a place called the Sword of Kaigen, which is this, I think it's an island or a peninsula, where all the mighty warrior clans of the country called Kaigen live. So they are part of the country borders the Uranganese Empire, which they have been at war with for quite some time. So right now there is kind of a peace agreement, but there's always high tensions and they'll never really know when there's going to be another war. So those warriors, they are basically on the front line all the time. I mean, they're living there and they are there to prevent the Uranganese from entering the country because that's where they would do it. The story follows 2 members of the Matsuda family, Misaki, who is the mother, and Mamoru, who is the son. So we have a kind of interesting dynamic here because I don't think I've ever read a novel where mother and son are in the focus, really. So Misaki, she is a housewife. In Kaigen, men do things, women do housework. It's a very, very misogynistic country, which I didn't like. I don't like to read about those things that much. Yeah. Anyways, Mamoru is Misaki's eldest son. He's 14 and he's attending school, but in Kaigen, or in the place where they live, boys who go to school, they also train to fight. And they not only train in sword fight, because they're very well versed in sword fights there, they also train their kind of water bending magic. Basically all people in this place, they have some kind of water bending ability. I think the village is called Takayubi and it's high up on a mountain and it's also very cold, and they also manipulate snow, they can do some icy stuff. The Matsuda family is known for the Whispering Blade, where they create a blade out of water molecules, which is super cool. And some people, or some families rather, they are even known to have some blood manipulating abilities. So the magic system is really interesting. Yeah, so we follow those 2 characters as they, in the beginning, just do their day-to-day stuff and then things happen. Let's talk about the things I liked in this book. So I think the setup itself was great. So I don't think that there's that many mother-son relationship books out there in fantasy, and I thought it was really well done. I think that it was a very unique premise, and also the way the book progressed and the things that happened in the book were very, very interesting. So I don't know if it's a spoiler, but in case you don't want to know anything about the book, just don't listen for a second. So I think that the way the story handles the like normal day-to-day life and the battle aspect and the aftermath of the battle, those things were very, very interesting, because I don't see those things often in stories. So you usually get to the big battle, and after the battle's done, the book is done, basically. And in this book, we spend a lot of time with the aftermath, and I really like that, because I think it could be done way more, because it's so like this devastating kind of atmosphere, and the things that happen even after the fight is over, how much the villagers have to endure, all those things were really, really well done, and I really, really like that aspect of the book. So spoilers over. There were also some very strong scenes, so even though I didn't really enjoy the book as a whole that much, some scenes were exceptional. So there was one fight scene in particular between Misaki and another character, which was so good, because those two characters, they were sharing their emotions while they were fighting. They were fighting and also communicating, and it was so great. It was really, really good. So I really liked this as well. I also like the world itself. So I like world building. Give me a great world and I'm usually satisfied. So I think the world from that ML1 created is really interesting. So you have those Theonites, who are the water bender, fire bender, air benders people. So those things, the magic system was very interesting and very well done. I think the political intrigues of the country and the other countries and all those, like the political network thing, it was really interesting. And I honestly, I wanted to see more of the world, of the other places in this world. So I really like that aspect as well. What I didn't like. So I think one of my main problems that I had with the book was that I never really connected to the characters. I don't know why. I think it's hard for me to say. I guess sometimes those characters, you just don't feel them. And in this book, I didn't feel them. I mean, they were not bad characters. I didn't mind them, but it was not like, oh, I want to know what happens to them. I like them so much. That was not the case. And when people said like, oh, I was crying the whole time, I was like, so my eyes, they teared up once a little bit, but not much. And I'm very easily like served when it comes to crying. I cry very easily when things are emotional sometimes. But this book, it didn't really make me cry. It just didn't, even though there was some very horrific things happening. And that's another aspect of the book that I think I personally did not enjoy, and that was the horrific things that happened. When I was reading this book, I was constantly thinking things like, holy shit, this is depressing. Like, I don't want to keep reading it. It's just, there is just no enjoyment of this book for me right now. It's just sad. Why is all of this so sad? There are no nice things, and that kind of made me furious. Not really, but it just felt so... Why should I read this book where everything is suffering and nothing is like hopeful? I mean, there were hopeful things, but it was... Yeah, for a while it wasn't... I didn't like reading it. It just didn't give me any kind of fun. It was just sad. Yeah. I also did not like where some of the characters ended up. So especially Misaki's character arc, because she started as this housewife who had basically, so she accepted her life, and her life wasn't great, and then during the course of the book she decides that maybe she could do something about all that stuff. But in the end, I did not like how her character arc ended. And then there's also the worst character in this book, and that's her husband Takashi. No, Takeru. Takashi is her brother-in-law. Takeru. And he's just the worst. I hated him. I hated him so much that whenever he was on page, I was like, "Ugh, just make him go away." I didn't want to read about him. I didn't want to see him in this book at all. And even in the end, I don't know. I just didn't like him. I think some aspects of his character were very, very interesting. But it wasn't enough for me to see him as a likable person at all. No. So in between there was a glimmer of hope, and I was like, oh, now he's going to turn into someone that I can appreciate. But in the end, no. I'm sorry. I can't stand him. He's just, no. Another thing that bugged me is Misaki's backstory. So before she became this housewife and mother of children, she was in another country doing stuff, and there was a whole chapter dedicated to this. And that chapter was, I didn't care for this chapter. I was like, oh God, when is this going to end? And it was very long. I think I would have minded less if there was more of her past life and more sprinkled through the book, and we'd get like, I don't know, 5 chapters, 20 pages each. I think that would have been better, because in the chapter which is about the past, we get like a love story, another character, a whole other place. And so when I read this, and like I said, the book is about sword fights and waterbending, and then we end up in a modern day city which is about vigilantes. I was like, what book am I in? For me, it took me out of the story. I didn't like it. It just felt so out of place, and I think that's very unfortunate. I know that other people liked this part because it highlighted Misaki's earlier life, but for me it was either too much or too little, and it was in this wrong middle spot for length, and that it just, no, it was more of a hindrance than anything that added anything for me to the story. Also the last chapter, no, could have done without it. So where does that leave me and the Sword of Kaigen? Well, like I said, I think the Sword of Kaigen is a really good book, and I think that people will enjoy it. I will also recommend it to people who are into those kind of stories which don't follow the typical setup for a fantasy story and also deal with some other things, because those things are very, very interesting and I really appreciated them. But the story just wasn't for me. I couldn't connect to the story. I didn't like how it ended, or rather how the characters ended up. No, so I really wished that I would have enjoyed the story more, because I can see why people like it. And then I'm there and I'm like, I can totally see all of your points, but no. Yeah, no. And those are my thoughts on the Sword of Kaigen. So, I want to tell you that you should pick it up, read this book, be the judge of this story. Many people who have read a lot of books really like this book. I've only seen high praises for this book, and I'm one of those people who couldn't quite enjoy it. Yeah, but that's it for today. So if you enjoyed this video, leave a comment down below. How did you like this book if you've read it? Do you want to pick it up if you haven't? Has this review helped you making your decision? And yeah, consider coming back, check out some of the other videos, and see you again soon.